more pushback, I think, if I deliver a half-baked idea.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. I I think it's scary to kind of like go all in because that could be just a lot of time, you know? Same thing with mixing. Like for me, when I'm mixing, I often try to give like a vibe. Like if I get like a 2-hour mixing session in, I could get it pretty close to a rough mix thing that like, hey, what do you like? Is this a good direction? And like for me, that like it's like, okay, I don't have to go all the way down that rabbit hole before getting the feedback. But to commit all the way is a lot, you know?
It really depends on your relationship and the openness, right? I used to have this, where someone in the band might want me to push a song in a certain direction, and I might go a little bit further with it. And then because bands are democracies, you've got somebody doesn't like the direction. So what we would do is they would ask me to come to their listening session. So you'd finish mixing the album and it'd be like, okay, let's all get in a room because then you can tell us why you did it instead of us telling you we don't like it. And I always thought that was kind of a funny process. You're almost like making a case for yourself.
Right. It's like a doctorate program or something.
Like, and here's why.
Defend your doctorate. Yeah.
I hear you though. It is tough. Sometimes I worry that if I send out, or if you don't ask about the direction, that you play it a little bit too close to the middle. If you don't say, hey, what do you think about this vibe? Then you are just trying to kind of shoot down the middle and have it just be pleasing. Like, oh, like they'll like this because it's just good. But did you do something dangerous? Did you have any fun or, make it exciting?
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool. So it sounds like you usually go the route of like, let's go all the way in on this concept and then send a deliverable.
Yeah. I will definitely do that. I mean, I did a record for my friend Jeff Waters, and I remember him coming in, and I was just kind of like, biting my finger like, oh my gosh, what is he going to think when I show him this song? Because it is not what he sent me. But that was fun. Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of, sometimes it takes people a little bit to get used to it, and sometimes I've scrapped it. I will usually give you two versions. If I make you a version of your song that you don't like, I'll go ahead and do another one. But I'm pretty quick. I can usually get what I need for you in maybe 4 to 5 hours.
All right. Well, killing it. That's the way to do it. I guess if you get better at your craft and faster at your craft, you can do a real deliverable at a faster pace. And that's super important. Do you have like a trademark sound or any signature moves that you tend to do inside of a production that, maybe make your production stand out?
Oh, man. I guess everybody does it now, but I have really always loved fat snare drums. You'll almost never catch a song of mine. Almost it's a crutch. I'm like, I just don't know how to make a song unless the snare drum's 190, just like, poof. It's like another kick drum.
Totally. I'm with you. I love it.
Yes.
I love the fat snares.
Yeah, I'm kind of, every once in a while I'll get to the mixing stage and I'll just kick myself for being like, man, you did it again, and you cranked that drum down and now there's no more room for a bass guitar. Because like the kick and the snare are just like right next to each other. You're like, well, where's the bass supposed to go? Up or really far down.
Really far. Yeah, totally.
I work on so many different songs and records that I don't think I have a specific thing I do all the time. Like I just did kind of like a mathy metal record, just all instrumental, and then at the same time I'm mixing a country song and I'm mixing like a ambient pop track, and I can't really combine tricks across those. Every song needs its own kind of sonic texture. I guess distortion and saturation is something I use on everything.
It seems like you just are a lover of all kinds of music and are willing to just like engineer and do anything. Like you sent me some tracks that you did that were like really classical pieces in a church, live recordings that sounded beautiful. You want to talk about those? Those are something else.
Yeah, that's been a huge learning experience.
I know that Matt was also slightly involved in that project.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that was one of those things. I think I was booked, and during the pandemic, there were a couple things we had to do down in Nashville, and I think I had to fly out. And so I had Matt cover me for some of those. Basically, the last year really changed a lot for me because all these classical groups didn't have performances. So they had their budgets for putting on performances, and these churches also had their budgets for their normal choir that they would have had every Sunday for a year. These budgets were available, and what they wanted to do was do video recitals. And a friend of mine, Nick Hughes, who lives in Baltimore, is a videographer here. We've played in bands. We actually went to middle school together and high school. So we played in jazz band and marching band, and we've been in touring bands. So I've known Nick forever. He was doing all the video for it. So a lot like these projects where somebody's like, hey, can you write me a full country song? And I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And then I got to figure out how to do it. I stepped in and was like, okay, we're going to start being a classical engineer now. And it's a whole different world. You know, it's 6 mics and no EQ. You know, like I don't EQ any of the mixing. Everything is just dialed in, and you better nail it when you do it.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, they sounded really pristine, and it's true. It's funny, you said that with the no EQ, because I feel like obviously EQ adds some phasiness, and when you're dealing with like an acoustic space, that's when things start to get really weird. Like I've done a bunch of like recordings in like shitty sounding spaces, and then you start to EQ out like some of the issues, and it just gets worse,
Yeah, all of a sudden you've got resonance elsewhere, especially with the phase and the smearing between 2 sets of mics. So,
right.
The theory, there's so many philosophies on recording, but classical is kind of a different world than like making a rock record. Everybody says, we'll break all the rules. But like in classical, it's like, well, I don't know if you should break any of those rules. Like 2 Omni microphones as a spaced pair is still one of the best ways to get a sound. If you can do it with 2 microphones and you can nail the balance of direct sound to ambient sound, then that's going to be the least amount of phase and the least work for you to get right. So if you're recording piano, like 5 feet outside the piano with 2 Omni mics, well, you're kind of done. You don't have to use any reverb. You don't have to, if you need brighter, just push it forward a little bit.
Wow, that's crazy. So those pianos, you literally were just recording with room mics, and that was it, basically.
Yeah, a lot of that is that way. I think the only times I would spot mic anything would be I had these vocalists with an organ, and the organ was just so loud. This old Latorno organ in Emmanuel Church down here, which, it's a beautiful church. I don't use any reverb because the church is reverberant enough. It's got
it's all natural.
Oh, yeah. It's got a 2-second reverb on it. So
woo.
I'll take some Omni mics and put them out on the floor. So basically you have boundary mics, so you've already laid your mics on the floor. So they're kind of like those PZMs, And then I'll have mics on a bar. So you've got your 2 Omnis. I do spaced pair, although it really doesn't. You got to be careful with mono compatibility on those. Those can get a little funky on you. But Omni mics, there's really no point in doing XY. You're not going to get anything out of that. So it's got to be a spaced pair. They pick up the lowest frequencies. So their range is so extended that being able to catch 30 and below on a organ that is just enveloping the room in low end, like you can really get that like gut punch of the organ, which is pretty cool.
Wow. So it's really a simple recording. It's a simple mix as long as you're very careful at the source.
Yeah, it's so stressful because of that for a couple of reasons. I don't have any, but for most of these, it's, we're loading in that day and we're loading out that day. I don't really have time to set up a control room. At this time, I basically put together a mobile rig last year to do all this. So I got 16 channels of DAV, Pre's, DAV, moved over to a new interface, the Lynx Aurora, and then started just buying. Here's a great hack for anybody that doesn't know already. The mics that I use on all those, they're called Line Audio mics. They're made in Sweden, and they are really affordable, like under $200 per mic. And so I have a bunch of their Omnis and a bunch of their cardioids, because most of my other nice mics weren't really going to work on it. Neumann 102s or something weren't going to cut it. So you needed Omnis. Really, is what I learned.
Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah, I love the idea of Omni. I really need to experiment more with Omni mics. It's like when studio guys that, and gals that work on like pop music, it's like, what do you need other than, cardioid? But like for that kind of stuff, it's, cardioid, you don't get it. There's no proximity effect, right? With cardioid microphones.
With Omnis.
With Omnis.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, there isn't. And there's a difference, and I'm going to kind of butcher this probably, but between pressure grade Omnis, which are really true Omnis, so a small diaphragm Omni, versus a dual plate Omni. So, if you have a U87 and you can put it in Omni, that's two plates being charged instead of just one capsule that actually is an Omni. I could be a little bit messed up in my explanation of that, but there is a slight
I don't know
difference.
nearly enough about this stuff.
And honestly, I had a buddy of mine who, his name's Max Kuzmiak, an engineer in the area who had been doing classical for a long time and was always telling me, hey, man, you got to use Omnis. You got to. And I was like, man, like, I don't know about that. And now actually recording all this classical has really shifted my perception of how to get drum sounds or mic and acoustic guitar.
Yeah. Because acoustic guitars get so boomy with the cardioid mics, right?
Totally. And just placement, because I used to fix things a little bit more, but not being able to EQ made me realize, I took a little bit more time with my placement.
That's awesome. So those are super natural sounding recordings. Like, are they even compressed?
No. So every once in a while, I will do a little bit of parallel maximizing with that Vice maximizer. I don't know, it's just a plugin that can kind of help to get a little bit out of it if you're missing some like weight. I have two Stam Pultecs, so tube EQs that I will use sometimes if I want to round off the top end a little bit to make it feel like there's no end. It's a funny trick. If you actually shave off 20K, it almost feels like there's no ceiling to the audio because it kind of just disappears into this mist of like tube EQ instead of like, oh, I can kind of hear the top end of that mic and I can kind of tell what's up there. And if it's
when you hear that top end, it usually doesn't sound very good, right?
Yeah. So I will actually, that's something I do a lot, even on pop vocals now. I'll record with a super bright mic, like a C12 or something. Clone C12 VR. I'm not using the original.
We got like the Slate one or
oh yeah, they're super cool. I've not actually gotten the chance to use the Slate one, but I hear cool things. But what I'll do is I'll actually end up taking 20K and attenuating it through a tube EQ because the mic was so bright already and it's compressed and you've got all this other stuff going on. You're saturating it. Like at the end, I kind of just like take a little bit off and darken it up so it sits in the track a little bit better.
I love that. Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of the inverse of what a lot of people have been telling me about ribbon mics, where ribbon mics have a natural curve and they just, there's no real, there is no 20K in a ribbon mic usually. So you could kind of boost the ribbon mic and get like a different kind, like in the high mids and get like a really nice lush top end.
Oh yeah. So as you can see behind me, I've got this R84, but I've got I have a bunch of AEAs. I love ribbon mics. It's honestly, if I could just record everything with only ribbon mics, I would. So I've got the R88 stereo.
You're one of several people who've told me this.
And I've got, I just picked up those Coles 4038s and I did vocals with it and it was so dark, a lot of proximity effect on that, but you can put a lot of shine on that really quickly and it sounds nice.
Yeah, so cool. Wow, I love it. I love geeking out on microphones.
Oh yeah, I know. I have a problem.
No, but I think it's great because I feel like a lot of people like to talk about mixing and what we do afterwards, but it's so important to talk about also how you capture the source because it'll make your life so much easier. And also, it's the vibe of a record, really, how it's recorded.
Yeah, I mean, I come from, being young and recording in basements and getting, Mobtown, which was this amazing room for me growing up and engineering in my early 20s. but it's a row home. You know, it was a row